This is the Skeptic Squared podcast.
A safe place to make light of sacred things.
My name is Matt.
And I'm Corinne.
And in this program, we will be discussing current events related to religion, atheism, and skepticism. Our goal is not to insult believers,
Although that will probably happen from time to time.
but rather to share our point of view on these topics in a way which will benefit and entertain others.
Or maybe we just want to stroke our own egos. You decide.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Squared podcast. Today is Sunday, March 13th, 2016. And with me is my wife, Corinne.
Hi.
How you doing?
Tired.
Tired?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daylight savings sucks.
Daylight savings is not a good idea.
Nope.
Yeah. It always makes me really tired.
Yeah.
Okay. That's enough current events.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. So to start out, I have a fun story. This is from the website rawstory.com.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you what the story headline is, because that'll give away too much.
Okay.
I'm just going to read what they have.
Okay.
Alec Dewane, I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly, thought he was filled with the Holy Spirit when he decided to challenge lions at the Kruger National Park. So this is in Africa, in Ghana.
Holy crap.
Okay. The Zion Christian Church prophet was at the park with his fellow church members when, according to Ghana Web, he went into a trance and began speaking in tongues. Okay.
Okay.
So this is not a very common thing in Mormonism. It's something that we talked about a little bit, I think, last week, that it happened more in the early days of the church, but they kind of shied away from it because it was just a little too ridiculous and too over the top. But there are a lot of Pentecostal churches and a lot of evangelical churches that still do talking in tongues and all that kind of stuff. So this is what's going on.
Okay.
The group approached the pride of lions while they munched happily on an antelope.
Oh my gosh.
But that's when Dewane ran towards the lions.
Why would you run towards lions?
He's filled with the Spirit of God. Okay? Don't worry, he'll get to his explanation in a minute.
He survives?
Oh, just wait. Just wait. You're going to like this.
Oh my gosh.
Out of Africa, which is a group I'm not familiar with, lists humans as the major predator to lions. So it's no surprise that the lions took on the challenge. Once he realized what was happening, Dewane made an about face and immediately ran away. Unfortunately, lions are fast and fierce animals, and when one of the lions snapped her paws on him, Dewane sustained injuries to his, drumroll please, buttocks.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Just like an antelope.
Yep. The ranger fired his gun into the air to scare the lions off and rushed the prophet to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery to ensure he didn't lose most of his buttocks.
Holy crap.
So here is his explanation. I do not know what came over me. I thought the Lord wanted to use me to show his power over animals. Is it not we were given dominion over all creatures of the earth? He was eventually stitched up and discharged after spending the night in the hospital.
Wow.
So, what's the most ridiculous thing you've ever done under the Spirit of God?
I haven't done much under the influence of the Spirit of God.
Yeah, me either. Never done anything like that. The only thing that I can think of was, let's see, there were a few incidents on my mission where there were like skinheads that didn't really like us, and they would like taunt us or whatever, and we would just go about our business and not do what you would normally do under those certain those circumstances if you were not under the impression that God was going to protect you.
Right, because you're wearing your holy underpants.
Right, and there was one incident that actually involved the guy drawing a gun on me, and still, like, I turned away and I was scared and I didn't want to draw attention to it, especially since we were on a crowded bus. But yeah, in my mind, I'm like, well, I mean,
You were on a bus when he drew the gun on you?
yeah, yeah, and then yeah, it was just, but I had this attitude of, like I'm a missionary for God, like nothing's going to happen to me, and if it does, I'm just going to go to heaven, and it just totally changes your outlook. I mean, it's not quite as extreme as charging into a pride of lions.
Yeah, who does that?
But yeah, when you think that God is going to protect you, you tend to make stupider decisions.
Yeah,
in terms of your own personal safety, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or at least it can turn into that.
Right.
So, anyway, I thought that would be a fun way to start.
It's pretty fun. You're retarded.
Yeah.
Or sorry, I shouldn't use that word. Ridiculous.
It's more ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, yeah. What articles do you have?
Well, mine aren't as fun as that.
It's okay. This is a rarity.
So the first one I thought we could talk about was this bill that's being passed in Utah
Okay.
that requires fetal anesthesia for abortions.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, it's just...
This is in Utah?
This is in Utah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the bill would require doctors that perform abortions, one, to tell their patients or the women that are that want to receive the abortion that the fetus can feel pain, which has not necessarily been proven. In fact, it's like, from what I've read, it's more likely to be somewhere in the vicinity of 24 to 29 weeks where they finally start developing the pathways that register pain.
Okay.
So a lot of the doctors in the area oppose the bill for that reason, because they are essentially lying to their patients. And then it would require anyone that is searching for an abortion over 20 weeks to get anesthesia in the mother. So the mother would receive the anesthesia in the hopes that the baby or the fetus gets the anesthesia.
So they wouldn't even be applying the
No, they're not
anesthesia
applying it directly
to the fetus.
It's to the mother. And apparently, I mean, I haven't done a ton of research into it, but apparently giving the mother anesthesia before performing an abortion makes it more likely to have, it's just more dangerous. It's more dangerous for a woman to receive anesthesia before getting an abortion.
What's the danger exactly?
It doesn't really go into detail of that. I haven't done a ton of research into it, unfortunately. But let me see. It just says it puts her at higher risk for complications. I don't know what those complications are, but...
So things might go wrong.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, okay.
So, I mean, you're not put under anesthesia when you have a baby. I mean,
Not necessarily. The epidural
right.
is...
The epidural.
I mean, I don't know if that is technically anesthesia. I'm not familiar enough with the process or
I mean, they will...
the terms.
Like, I think with a C-section, they'll numb the area or something, but you're still awake.
Yeah. So they're going to knock out the woman?
I don't know.
Okay.
I should do more research on that.
But I mean, the takeaway from this, of course, is that this is just one more example of the Christian right trying to discourage women from having an abortion, from doing something.
What the article says too.
From doing something that's perfectly within their right to do. It's like the bill that's been passing in a few states. I think like Texas and a couple others in the South have passed it, where they have to get an ultrasound and hear the heartbeat before they can get an abortion, and those sorts of things. And it's all about making the woman feel guilty.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not medically necessary.
And the interesting thing, too, is that most abortions in the state of Utah happen before 20 weeks. Yeah. So it's not going to prevent that many more abortions. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like most of the abortions that happen after 20 weeks are usually because there's danger to the mother. I mean, I know there are the instances where people still get them, but I don't know. It just isn't going to do that much.
Well, 20 weeks is what? How many months? Like 5?
5 months? Yeah, 5 months.
Like
so by that point, you know you're pregnant.
You know you're pregnant, and you know more or less what you want to do with the baby. If you want to keep it, if you want to put it up for adoption or have an abortion. Like most women, I think by that point, by 5 months, have made that decision. And so, yeah, it's just weird.
It is weird. And the governor has to sign it first, and he doesn't understand why there's so much opposition to it, because basically he just says it's preventing pain in, a baby or a fetus, and everyone should be okay with that because it's preventing pain. But they can't prove that the fetus is experiencing pain. And they
Right.
say, like a lot of people that are pro-life point to the fact that, like, babies will respond to pain, but it's usually just like a reflex that they have no control over, and until they develop the pain pathways.
It's
or
more
whatever
of
it's
a
called.
reaction than
Yeah.
it is sentience.
Yeah, it's a reaction that they have no control over.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah. Oh, and also if you are looking for an abortion over 20 weeks, now you have to get the approval of 2 doctors before they do it.
Just more hoops.
Yeah, it's more
Just more
hoops for
hoops.
them to go through.
What is the cap for an abortion in Utah? Do you know?
I don't know.
Most states, I think, are like 24 or 28 weeks.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
I'm not certain about it.
I think it's 23 or 24.
Yeah. Well, we haven't really talked about abortion much. There's been a lot of stuff going on with Planned Parenthood, especially since the shooting that happened a couple months ago. But before that, there were the videos that were supposedly leaked, where they were supposedly selling baby fetus parts,
Right.
and making money off of it. And even after the people that made those videos came out and said that they had fabricated them to a certain extent and had essentially lied to Planned Parenthood about what they were doing and all this stuff, and then apparently they're being sued or having criminal charges placed against them because apparently even doing an undercover operation to buy fetal parts when you have no intention of actually buying them, it's still illegal. So,
Well, that and they forged legal documents.
oh, did they?
Yeah, like they had their licenses changed and stuff. So it goes beyond,
okay.
editing these videos. It's the whole thing was illegal.
Right. Yeah, and then they said more or less that that they had intentionally altered them to make it look like they were admitting to things that they weren't actually admitting to. And even so, after all of that had happened, we still have presidential candidates saying that they had seen these videos about Planned Parenthood buying and selling baby parts.
Arena.
Right. And all that. It's like, yeah, it's like, what state are we in?
Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. But politics is a totally different rabbit hole. And there's all kinds of things going on right now with politics, but I don't really want to get into it.
No.
So is that all you have for that particular article?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's move on. I have a little ditty from LDS.org, not the... well, actually, I think it is from... Yeah, that's the official Mormon website, isn't it? LDS.org?
Yeah.
Okay. And they have a recommendation for people who don't have enough to do on Sundays. Because, as you know, Mormons like their prohibitions on Sundays to show that they are super reverent and that they are obedient.
Right.
Keeping the Sabbath day holy is how they frame it, right? And so LDS.org has a Sabbath day bucket list. Okay?
So these are things to aspire to, right?
These are just things to do on Sunday.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, like it's not really much of a bucket list as far as bucket lists go.
Right.
I was expecting things like, going on like a trek kind of thing, or going to like historical sites and all that kind of stuff. No, this is much more mundane.
Like reading your scriptures and writing in your journal.
A couple of them, yeah. So the first one: locate all the temples on a world map and mark them with pins.
Exciting.
Write thank you notes to those who spoke in church.
What?
Have you ever heard of that ever happening?
No. I would feel so weird about getting a thank you note.
Yeah. Secretly decorate someone's front door with notes of appreciation.
Young women do that all the time.
The whole writing notes thing is a common theme in a lot of these.
Yeah.
take a Sunday walk.
That's pretty typical.
I
My
don't
family
know-
did that all the time.
I don't know what makes a Sunday walk different from a regular walk.
Well, I think a Sunday walk, they're implying that it should be with your whole family.
Yeah, I guess. But
Throughout
I don't
the
know,
week,
it's
it's
just
hard to do
funny.
that.
It's like, let's have a Sunday pizza.
Yeah.
Let's have a Sunday video game. You know,
No, you can't do that on Sunday.
but if it's a Sunday video game,
No.
can't you?
Like what? You,
In my
your
family-
avatar is Nephi?
Yeah.
You have to go through the Book of Mormon.
That's funny. Yeah, that's what they should do. They should come up with a Book of Mormon themed video game where you can actually like play Ammon and hack off the arms of the Lamanites and then present them to the king.
Be the stripling warriors.
Yeah. Like
Be
there's-
Tiankum.
There's a lot of potential. Oh yeah, Tiankum, sneak into a tent
Stealthily
and stab
sneak
somebody
in
in
and
the heart.
stab 2 people.
Okay, the next one is have a Book of Mormon readathon.
Oh, gross. That is boring.
Isn't that just like,
Kill me now.
yeah,
A readathon.
just makes you want to gouge your eyes out.
Yeah. Just makes me want to fall asleep.
Which,
That's
if
what
you
that
did,
makes me
you
wanna
could
do.
still get it on tape. So,
That's true. Just put in your earphones.
let's see. Make cookies and write a note to someone in your ward telling them what you admire about them. So, another note. Yeah. Create an I'm grateful for list or poster.
These all sound like family home evening activities, too.
Right. Yeah, these are just boring. Create a gospel quote book. Write a family newsletter and email it to extended family members.
Christmas. That's what Christmas is for.
Yeah, but you can do it every week if you want to.
Because so much happens in your life every week.
Yeah, isn't that what Twitter and Facebook are for?
Exactly. Yeah, these are all things that you would do if you weren't already connected to your family. Just because you don't see them doesn't mean they need a newsletter of your life.
Right.
They can look you up on Facebook.
Yeah, and like the whole like writing a note thing. Again,
Yeah.
you can just do that on Facebook or social media.
Right. And then everyone gets to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes that person feel even better because then other people comment on it.
Totally stroke their ego and make them feel bad for having an ego. Write a giant letter to the missionaries from your family on a large piece of butcher paper.
Because a regular letter isn't sufficient
Right.
on a giant piece of butcher paper.
Yep.
Because they assume that LDS families just have lots of butcher paper.
Yeah. I actually got one of those on my mission.
Really?
Yeah.
No way. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
From someone in your ward?
For my family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Your family seems to like butcher paper.
Yeah, they do a
Because
lot of stuff like with
At
with
your
that,
parents'
yeah.
house, wasn't there like a big Father's Day card or something on butcher paper on the wall? That's funny.
Have a family object lesson contest.
What?
They explain. Have everyone pick 1 or 2 items around the house and come up with a story about how that item can illustrate a gospel principle.
Holy gag me with a spoon. Good gravy. This is terrible. This is why I hated Sundays and why I hated family home evening.
Right.
Because it is so corny and contrived. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, we used to do stuff like this actually on my mission, and I came up with a lesson that used ingredients to make a crepe to illustrate like some principles of the gospel. I forget what it was exactly, but the whole point was that we could use it as an excuse to meet with the members and eat crepes.
Right.
So, in the end, it was okay. Make phone calls to loved ones to let them know you're thinking about them.
Again, Facebook is sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all just various ways to tell people that you like them.
And to keep people off the internet.
Oh,
Write things down. Don't contact anyone over the internet.
I didn't even put that together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Making notes, phone calls, yeah.
Yeah.
Big butcher paper.
Yeah.
No internet needed.
Nope.
Keep your testimony intact.
Yep.
Study your family history and act out a story.
Oh my.
Speaking of family history,
This is so painful. Oh.
speaking of family history, So I'm reading a book that you recommended.
Oh, yeah.
The Complete Heretic's Guide to Western Religion, The Mormons, which is written by David Fitzgerald. Great book. A lot of good information about Mormons.
Very entertaining.
It's a fun book to read. But I learned something about my own family history in that book.
Oh, Parley P. Pratt?
Yeah. Did you know how he died?
Well, I read the book, so I should say yes, but I can't remember.
So I didn't know this, but he died because he was a polygamist.
Oh, he was trying to get someone else's wife.
Exactly. He was trying to steal another man's wife, which is something that Joseph Smith did and Brigham Young did all the time.
Was this while he was out on a mission?
It didn't say.
I feel like it was when he was out on his mission.
Maybe. He went on
somewhere
lots
in
of
the
missions.
Midwest.
But the husband found out about it and murdered him.
Yep.
That happened to my great-great-great-grandfather.
Yep. You won't hear that story coming from your mom.
Nope.
Is it on your mom's side or your dad's
My
side?
dad's side.
Okay.
Yeah.
You won't hear it coming from your dad then.
Yeah. So that's fun.
That is funny. I remember reading that and thinking that I should text you about it. I don't
really?
remember if I actually did or not.
I can't remember. Because you read it like 6 months ago or
Yeah.
something, right? It was a while
Last
ago.
summer. It's almost been a year.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I can't think of any stories of my family as pioneers.
Yeah. That just seems like it would be, I don't know, really awful to try to reenact. Because like the things that the pioneers had to do were either awful or completely mundane, you know.
Well, and I think I'm guessing that reason is because most of my family probably converted fairly recently.
Well, your dad did.
Yeah, my
then-
dad is like first generation LDS on his
And
side.
how far back does your mom's side go?
I don't know, to be perfectly honest. I don't
Yeah.
know a ton about my mom's side of the family. They don't like to talk about that side of the family.
So something bad happened.
I have no idea. It was a different time. I think I want to say that my grandma's parents were kind of abusive. I think that's why they don't talk about it.
So I was right.
Yeah.
Something bad happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you prepared to be, standard corrected? I'm not sure exactly how. Put in your place? I don't know. All this talk about social media and writing notes and stuff.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you ready?
Excellent.
Find gospel quotes to share on social media.
That's funny.
So
But
that you
it's
can
still
become-
very directed.
Yeah, so that you can make yourself a target.
Yeah. Seriously, you are drawing that target on your forehead for that.
Right. Yeah.
But I will say, Sundays are awful on Facebook because everyone, like the majority of my acquaintances on Facebook are LDS. And so I always get like verses from hymns or a scripture that they really liked in their lessons or some random thought that they read in the ensign. Like it's awful.
Yeah. It's like
Facebook on
going
Sunday
to
is terrible.
church.
Yeah, exactly. Or like pictures taken outside of the church.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Create a family motto and display it in your home. Yeah.
My family did that once. I don't remember what
really?
the motto was.
What did you do to display it? Or did you display it?
I don't even remember. I want to say it was just on a piece of like construction paper or something, and we taped it to the fridge.
Okay.
Nothing crafty like wood or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like they
This
want
was
you to do.
before my dad worked for Probocraft.
Oh. He's much more crafty now.
He's much more crafty now.
This is one that we used to do all the time.
Okay.
Because, again, my parents were very strict about what you could or couldn't do on Sunday.
Yeah, your family was a lot more strict than my family was.
But this is one that we could do, and so I did it all the time. Look through family photo albums. Yeah. And we also would watch like homemade movies and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Choose an article of faith to memorize. One for the kiddies, right?
Yeah, that's popular if you have younger kids.
I think all of these would work better if you had a little kid.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. That is why I started to hate Family Home Evening, because everything is geared towards you being like a child. It's awful. It's demeaning. Like, I just hated it.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's the whole. That really is, I think, what the Mormon Church thinks of as a family.
Yeah.
You have the parents and little kids.
Exactly.
You know,
regardless of how old they are.
like there are lots of different aspects of the church that are very juvenile. And not just the ones that are directed directly at kids. Like the way that they run activities, the way that they, do a lip sync, for instance, a common activity. It's all very rated G and juvenile.
It's rated G, and you are not allowed to make the decision.
It's
you can
the kind of thing you would see on like that Hillary Duff show, those kinds of things.
Lizzie McGuire?
Yeah, probably.
That's funny.
I haven't watched the Disney Channel in like 20 years, so.
Oh, Lizzie McGuire.
Yeah.
That wasn't one of my favorite ones.
Oh, okay. I actually remember my little brothers and sisters liked that one.
Megan really liked that one. Oh. I liked Even Stevens better.
Oh. Draw and deliver pictures to elderly people in your neighborhood. Create a food storage plan.
Why would the kids do that?
I don't know. This is the last one. Invite a family in the ward you would like to know better to your home for a family fireside.
Oh.
Could you imagine?
My dad used to try and do that all the time.
Oh, really?
Yep.
When he was bishop?
No, even before he was bishop. I think that's why he was bishop.
Oh. Because he's into this kind of stuff?
Yeah, he really is into this kind of stuff. Like we would do like our own sacrament meetings, like when we went camping, he would do devotionals all the time. 4th of July is an awful holiday at my house.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's just very godly patriotism, that kind of thing.
Yep, and he invites the entire neighborhood. We have a flag ceremony. He reads the Declaration of Independence and gives a little speech about it. One year he made me play the saxophone. It was awful.
What did you play? Star Spangled Banner?
Probably the Star Spangled Banner. Something patriotic.
Yeah.
Or My Country 'Tis of Thee. I don't remember. It was a while ago. I was like 10.
I really need to pee.
Yeah, my dad's into that.
Yeah, he likes that kind of stuff. Yeah, my family didn't really do that kind of stuff. We would get a bit preachy around like Christmas. We would reenact the what is it? The
nativity scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that for a while
Read
too.
Luke 2.
Yep. We do that every Christmas Eve as well. That's why I'm glad I don't live there anymore, because I don't have to do that.
In fact, the last time I went home for Christmas, I was an adult. This was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, probably right before we started dating, I think.
So probably 3 years ago.
4 years ago. And it was me, and I had just recently, within like the last year or two, told my mom that I stopped going to church and was an atheist, okay? And Megan, who had also told my mom within the last year or two that she was also an atheist and didn't go to church. And my brother Taylor, who was about to go on a mission.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And then my parents. Like that was who was at home for Christmas. Okay. And we have like a big family. It's 8 kids,
Right.
So this is not very many of the family. And my mom still made us do the nativity scene.
She made you act it out?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. My parents finally stopped because me and Missy refused to do it anymore. It's like, you can figure out how to do it on your own, but this is stupid.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun when I was a kid.
Yeah, because you're acting.
Yeah.
It's fun. You don't understand exactly what you're saying, but it's fun because I'm wearing a bathrobe and a towel on my head.
Right, and for us, the funnest position was always to be the donkey.
The donkey, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. My family was small enough that we would have to play multiple parts.
Yeah, we probably did too, but yeah, it's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
To do that with a group of adults.
Yeah,
My
that's
mom
weird.
was just, I think my mom was just super nostalgic and
Yeah.
loved the fact that we had actually come home for Christmas. She was worried that not anybody would be able to make it home. And so she just, wanted to do it because that's what we used to do when we were kids. And
So what part did you play?
I can't remember. I was probably the donkey. I don't know.
That is so funny. Megan would have had to have been Mary.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's fun.
I wish she had recorded that.
Oh, we had some. Not that particular one.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wish she had recorded that one.
Yeah. No, we recorded some from when I think I was in middle school.
So what sorts of things were you allowed to do on the Sabbath day?
Well, I already mentioned the photo albums and the home movies. We could do those. We could also make home movies, but that became more of a chore. We could walk around outside as long as we weren't really playing games, but I mean, if you're not really doing anything, what's the point of going outside?
Right.
You know, couldn't jump on the trampoline. And in high school, I was big into jumping on the trampoline. It was one of my favorite things to do when I wasn't doing some kind of extracurricular school thing, you know. We could nap, so we took lots of naps. We could read. I don't think that we had any prohibitions on reading things that weren't church related, but maybe, I don't know. It's been a while since I've been at home. Mostly it was just really boring. We could play board games, which didn't always help with the boredom.
Exactly. Board games.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just very, very boring. And I had a few friends that were allowed to watch like Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, that kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
And I was just always so envious. It's like, it's educational. We can totally watch it.
We're learning stuff about God's planet.
Right. Yeah. But no, my mom didn't buy it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Which is too bad. So, do you have another article?
Yeah. This one again is not very fun.
Okay.
This is also
You have all the serious ones?
yeah. This one is just unsettling. So the title is Alabama lawmaker proposes mandatory castration for child sex offenders. So this is like the second time this state representative has been trying to push this bill through.
Okay.
But it would mean that anyone over the age of 21 who commits a sex offense against a child 12 years or younger would be castrated automatically before they left custody.
Huh.
And his thinking for this is that it will deter other people from committing these offenses.
The problem, though, okay, maybe you're going to get into this, but...
That's basically the article.
Oh, okay.
The comments are more enlightening.
The problem, though, is that even with a more extreme crime, like murder, we have the death penalty, okay? And that doesn't deter everybody.
No.
It doesn't even necessarily deter most people.
Right.
You know,
Because no one thinks that they're going to get caught. No
Right.
one goes out to commit these offenses thinking, I'm going to get caught.
yeah, and so it still is a problem.
Exactly.
I've actually thought about this whole castration thing before. I have an uncle who is a fan of the idea. He apparently he's a big traveler. Okay, so he goes to different countries. He says that he's visited every country in the world, and he's got enough money that he may have. I don't know. And he says that in some countries, when you have violent repeat offenders, they give them the option after like their third offense or something along those lines to either go to prison for a really long time, maybe life, or have castration. The idea being that when you castrate a man, again, this is assuming that the person is a man.
Exactly.
But when you castrate them, they don't have the same levels of testosterone. Okay, most of the testosterone in your body comes from your testicles. When you cut them off, you don't get the testosterone, and that the idea being then is going to kind of suppress their violent urges. They're not going to be as aggressive physically, But with pedophilia, it's not going to make them less of a pedophile.
Exactly. They're going to find other ways
Yeah.
to satisfy those needs.
Yeah. So I don't know what the real purpose is. And
He wants to use it as a deterrent. That's the only thing.
it would be mandatory, right?
Yeah, it would be mandatory. Before the offender was released, he would be castrated.
And in the countries that my uncle says that this is a thing, the men are given the option. Like the whole idea of it being mandatory, that just seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
You know, for an offense like that. And I mean, it's an awful offense.
It is.
And I have no problem with having harsher punishments, maybe something along the lines of, life in prison, 25 to life kind of thing. But like taking a piece of their body as punishment, that's some barbaric stuff.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't illustrate the problem that not all sex offenders are male.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I read through a lot of the comments, and most people didn't even touch that. But there was one comment that actually was against this policy, and brought that up. It's what about the women? You're assuming that all sex offenders are men, and while women do have things that you can castrate, it's geared towards the male population.
Right. So I assume that this didn't pass.
It hasn't yet. This is, I think, the second time he's tried, and it didn't pass the first time, obviously.
Yeah, but it's still troubling that a person who is an elected official would even entertain the idea and try to push it.
Yeah, and that people agree with it. The majority of comments, people agreed with it.
Really?
There was only one sound person that didn't agree with it.
I think a lot of that just comes from the inherent anger that most people feel towards pedophiles.
Yeah, and it is. It is angering. I don't like those people.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily
want them to be punished,
mean...
but it doesn't mean I want to take their genitals off.
Right, that doesn't mean that it's a just punishment.
Right. I don't feel like that's moral.
Yeah. Well, I think that under, the Constitution, it would fall into the category of being cruel and unusual.
Yeah. Probably.
So.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah. It just... Ugh.
Yeah. I honestly, I would be more in favor of pushing for a death penalty than of castration, I think.
Me too. Yeah.
Just mutilating a person's body is not... It's not a just punishment.
Right. And I think he thinks it is because, it's this person did something sexual to this innocent person, took that innocence away, and now the equal punishment will be to cut off the thing that they most likely did it with. Right.
Well, and that, it's just like in, Sharia law, where the whole idea of taking the person's hand is they use the hand to steal something.
Yeah, you cut off the offending member.
Right. Yeah, and that's completely barbaric as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just funny because a lot of Republicans are terrified that we're moving towards Sharia law with things that Democrats are trying to get passed, but they don't see their own laws. They don't. I don't know. They're completely blind.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I've mentioned before that Sharia law is the modern equivalent of the law of Moses.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Yeah. It's just painful to think about.
Well, I think that's about all I have to say about castrating pedophiles.
Yes.
So the last thing that I have is an article from Zelf on the Shelf, whom we have talked about them before. They have a great blog. I highly recommend it. And they have an article that came out February 11th of this year.
Okay.
And it's titled 15 Things ExMormons Are Tired of Hearing.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I thought it was pretty interesting because, you and I have both left the Mormon Church. And I've had a few pretty heated discussions with family members about why I've left the church. And some of the things that they point out in this article apply to me in some of my conversations that I've had with family members.
Okay.
And you haven't been quite as open with a lot of your family members. You've expressed that you have doubts, but you haven't told them exactly to what extent.
Right.
So it'll be interesting, I think, to see if any of these relate to you in some of your conversations. So the first one is, you were offended and wanted to sin.
Right.
I
don't like people assuming that I was offended because I wasn't offended. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't leave the church so I could sin.
That's the big
Although
one.
my parents will think so.
Right. And that's the big one for me, is the whole idea that you just want to do things that your religion doesn't want you to do. Why would I, for instance... Okay, so the go-to example that I often use for this kind of thing, Salman Rushdie, author. Okay. When he left his religion, I think it was Islam, They have a prohibition in Islam that you can't eat pork. Okay, and so he had never eaten pork. When he left that his religion, he ate a ham sandwich for the first time and realized he wasn't going to get struck down by God for doing so. And it illustrates the point that, you know, once you leave a particular religion, those prohibitions are no longer sins.
Right.
They're just tenets of that religion.
Right.
You know, so why would you follow those tenets if you don't believe in that religion? You know.
I think part of the problem, too, is that they confuse it with teenage rebellion. They confuse leaving the church with that.
Right.
Because a lot of teenagers do end up leaving the church for a period of time because, they want to experience these things. They want to know what it's like to drink. They want to know what it's like to do drugs. They want to have sex.
Yep.
And they see that the only way to do that is by leaving the church. And eventually, like, they get kind of fed up with it and they come back because that lifestyle is really hard to maintain.
Yeah,
And
and
they
then
just
all of their
confuse everyone with
indoctrination
that.
comes back.
Yeah, exactly. They start to feel guilty and they're like, okay, I need to change my life because I am on a downward slope.
Yeah. And then they think that justifies, you know, the church's prohibitions.
Yeah.
You know,
And it
because,
just reaffirms
well,
the testimony that they had.
Right. Well, I got drunk once and I had a really bad hangover the next day and it's really expensive, so I can see why the church wouldn't want me to do it.
Right. And it is really expensive, but that has nothing to do with why the church doesn't want them to do it.
Right. The second thing is the idea that being offended isn't a valid reason to leave.
Right.
I think that it is a valid reason.
It is a valid reason.
Like, for instance, when you and I started dating and I started kind of introducing you to a lot of things, one of the things that I remember really upsetting you was Joseph Smith's polygamy and his manipulative tactics of coercing young women in particular to marry him. And you were upset, like visibly upset by learning about this information, you know, and that's real. And that's, and I think that discounting that is dishonest.
Right. And I would definitely cite that as being the reason why I finally decided that it was time to look into this stuff, because that was really disturbing to me. But okay, so on the offending thing. So I remember in one of my institute classes that I took, the teacher talked about, I can't remember the guy's name, some guy in the church who had his name misspelled. And because of this, he left the church because he was offended. And those are the types of like being offended that the church likes to use. Little things like that that lots of people like wouldn't actually be offended by.
Do you know the rest of that story?
I don't remember.
I don't remember the name, but I know the story. He wasn't offended because his name was misspelled.
Okay.
He wasn't offended at all. The reason why he left was because his name was misspelled in a revelation from God through Joseph Smith. Right. And that showed him that Joseph Smith wasn't a true prophet because he didn't know how to spell his name. That's why he left. He didn't leave because he was offended that he misspelled his name.
Right. I think that part was on Mormon Think, but obviously it's left out of when the church talks about it.
Yeah, it's like the guy who left over the cream. Like that story that they always pull out every couple of years in General Conference. The guy that left because his wife got in an argument over spilled cream or something like that.
Right.
And they leave out all of the other details about the things leading up to it and how the other lady had done this or that. And I can't even remember all the details to it. But when you really look at all of the stuff that was going on and the way that Brigham Young was taunting the man and saying that he wasn't a good polygamist, that Brigham Young could get a newer, younger wife more quickly than he could, like in church meetings, taunting the guy like that over the pulpit. Like, you can understand why this guy would just go, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, yeah.
But it's those kinds of stories that they always turn to.
Yeah,
and so the members just automatically assume that it's something silly like that.
Yeah, yeah. And in this article, they point out that John DeLynn, the guy who runs Mormon Stories, did a study where he found that wanting to sin and being offended were among the lowest of, or the fewest cited reasons for why somebody would leave the church. Most of the reasons fell into the category of questioning whether or not Joseph Smith was a prophet because of church history issues, or epistemological reasons. Things like, is there really a God? Like, is faith really a path to knowledge? That kind of stuff. Like those were the more common ones.
Yeah.
The idea of being offended or just wanting to sin was at the very bottom of the list.
Because again, I think most of those are from like teenagers, young adults, people that are trying to experience life that they've been denied.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to cope with that.
Yeah. Okay, second one.
Okay.
History isn't what's important.
History isn't what...
Don't worry
if
about
they
the
want
problems
to
in
use
history.
that argument for the church, they need to be okay with that argument, like when it comes to the Constitution and stuff. Like they can't use the Constitution, They can't use America's history to say, this hasn't been done before.
Yeah. To me, this is just a completely, it's a red herring. It's completely not related. Because, I mean, I guess on a certain level, the history isn't that important. But when the foundations of the church are built on fraud and manipulation
Exactly.
and lies and deception, and you can prove that through like court filings and transcripts and that kind of stuff, then it does, I think, bring into question whether or not Joseph Smith was a prophet.
Yeah.
And while it is, I guess, technically possible that God could use a weak person to bring about his church or whatever, that, of course, is based on the idea that there is a God in the first place. And the Mormons, again, as we've talked about many, many times, base all of that on feelings. Like it's based on the idea that their warm, fuzzy feelings that they get when they think about the good things that Joseph Smith did or the Book of Mormon or the church in general, that is enough for them, apparently, to discount all of the bad things that Joseph Smith did, or to not really care if he did bad things,
Right. Yeah. I think the history of Joseph Smith is really crucial.
Is it?
Yeah.
For you?
I do. For me, it is. That's ultimately, I would say that's why I decided to leave. Because everything is based on what Joseph Smith said. And it's like I said in an earlier podcast, they've got that circular reasoning where if Joseph Smith is a prophet, the Book of Mormon is true. If the Book of Mormon is true, the church is true. As soon as you lose one of those, the other two are gone.
Yeah.
And Joseph Smith being a polygamist, manipulating people, all the fraud, being a treasure seeker, like all of that. It's like this man would not have been chosen by God.
Yeah.
That goes beyond being a weak person. A weak person would be someone that occasionally has like the occasional vice.
Right.
But this guy was full of bad things. He was not a good person.
Yeah. I guess I come at it a little bit differently because when I was reconsidering my faith and looking at my doubts, my doubts weren't really based on Mormon church history. Mine were based on, epistemology. Like, is there a God? Is faith good? Like that kind of stuff. And when I came to the conclusion that there is no God and faith is not a path to knowledge, that just took everything with it,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it took me longer to get to that part.
And in the back of my mind, I always clung to the idea that if I do determine that there is a God and that, this and that is true, then you can justify some of the bad things in the history because the church is true. Therefore, it's the same old argument. If the church is true, then all of this stuff is valid and there must be a good reason and all that kind of thing, even if we don't know what it is. So I kept that kind of in my back pocket, I guess. But ultimately, decided there's no God. So, yeah. Third one. I've heard every anti-Mormon argument there is.
Okay.
The implication being that they've heard everything that you have to say.
They don't want to hear anything else.
And they still believe.
Yeah.
So why don't you?
Exactly.
Number 4 is similar. These arguments are nothing new.
Yeah, that is similar.
Which is something that, was it Elder Holland shared in his talk?
They say stuff like that all the time.
Right. It's like, these things have been flung at the church and at the Book of Mormon for 200 years. And
since
blah,
its
blah,
inception.
blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they discount all of the things that people are saying now. Like, we don't have exactly the same arguments. Some of the arguments are the same, but
Right,
even
like
the
I
ones,
would say the anachronisms in the Book of Mormon are fairly recent.
but even the ones that do come from the early days of the church, they are refined and more sophisticated now.
Exactly.
There's more information now.
There's more proof.
Yeah. It's like you can't just discount them because they've been around for a long time.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's a
And like
fallacy.
for an argument that's been around that long, don't you think that you should have been able to disprove that argument?
Right.
Like it's been around for that long because there is legitimate evidence to support that side of the argument. It would go away if you could support the other side, but they can't.
Right. I think they're saying that because it's been around for such a long time and the church is still here,
Right.
that proves that the argument doesn't hold any water.
Right.
Because if the argument held water, the church wouldn't be here anymore. Yeah. Which again, it's never that black and white.
No.
But the
Just
church
give it
wants it to
time.
be.
Because people are leaving.
Exactly. Number 5. This is a common one, not just in Mormonism. This is something that comes up a lot just in talking to people about their belief in God.
Okay.
God's ways are higher than our ways.
Ugh.
We can't understand why he does what he does.
Okay.
Don't you know?
Don't you know?
Well, how would you respond to that if somebody said that? Because it is a pretty common argument.
It is a common argument. How would I respond to that?
It's like if you were to come up with, let's say that you and your parents finally did hash things out and you brought up some of your concerns with polygamy, and your mom said, well, we don't know why Joseph Smith did the things that he did. We just know that he's a prophet of God and that God's ways are higher than our ways, and so God knows best.
Well, that would be slightly infuriating, especially if we actually talked about the polygamy, because why would God sanction 14-year-old marriage, stealing other men's wives? Like, none of that would be godly. Like, they have a weird perception of God.
Oh, but it's a different time.
This is why I don't want to have the conversation, because I'm not good at having conversations.
Yeah,
I never have been.
just not comfortable with it.
I'm not comfortable with it. I never have been.
Yeah,
And I think, I
and a lot of
honestly
people
think
avoid it.
part of that is because of the church, because I've never known how to talk about it or how to voice my concerns or my doubts. Because
You know what
as
you
soon
should
as
do?
you do that, you're targeted.
Yeah, but you know what you should do to get some practice?
What?
Go on to Mormon.org
And just write comments.
and just get into a conversation with some of the missionaries.
Ugh.
Just type it up. Just type it up.
That would be easier for me.
Yeah. That'll at least get your foot in the door.
Yeah. What would you say?
What would I say to that? That it's nonsensical. It doesn't matter. Like, you still have to prove that there's a God to have different ways anyways.
That's true,
and the
yeah.
idea that God would have mysterious ways and his own set of morality
And not share that with us?
right is problematic.
Yeah.
You know, because he has a different set of rules that he operates by than what we go by.
Right.
And people still point to him as the arbiter of morality.
Right. And then how can he be a just and merciful God if he's living by his own set of rules?
Exactly,
And
like-
not sharing that.
People often say that without God you have moral relativism. Well, God is a moral relativist.
Yeah.
His morals are his own. You know, according to most traditions that I've heard. You know, so all of the problems of moral relativism, you can't escape them just because there's a God.
Right.
Because God is a moral relativist. Okay, number 6. You should have talked to your bishop about your doubts.
Nope, because my bishop was my father.
Yeah, and then we're back to square one.
And then in the singles ward up here in Provo, it's like I didn't even know the bishop.
You just didn't really have a good rapport with anybody.
No, that word was bad. It was not a good word.
What was bad about it?
Well, just no one tried to get to know you. Like, everyone knew each other already, even if they weren't already in that ward. You know what I mean? Like, singles wards are very cliquey.
Yeah.
Very cliquey. And if you don't find a group to fit in with right away, you're pretty much by yourself forever. I hate the singles wards. The bishop didn't even know my name.
Really?
By the time I left, he still did not know my name.
Wow.
He would shake my hand, ask me how long I'd been coming to church, and what my name was every Sunday.
When I graduated from BYU, I moved to Orem near what is it? Utah Valley University. And I was in one of their student wards. And I actually went to the ward twice before I decided to just walk away. So this is the time when I was like I'm just tired of Mormon culture. I just need a break a little bit, and I was still trying to make that decision. That's one of the reasons why I moved over there, because I didn't know anybody, so it'd be easier to slip into inactivity. But I hadn't actually decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I went to the ward, the sacrament meeting twice, just to check it out, see what it was. And when I went there, I was early, first of all, so I was like the first person in the pews, both times. And both times, nobody ever talked to me. Nobody sat next to me. The second time that I went there, I was literally the only person in a pew by themselves. Everybody else was with their groups, and every single pew was full, except for mine.
Yep.
You know, like none of the bishopric came and introduced themselves, like elders quorum, ward missionaries, nobody. You know, they just let me be, and it was like, okay, I'm just gonna walk away.
Right.
Like, this place obviously doesn't welcome me.
Yeah. And it's like, on one level, like, that's kind of nice, not being like bombarded with all of these new people, like trying to be friendly to you, you know? But on the other hand, it's like, if this is really like an inspired religion, these people would know that I am struggling. Like, someone out of this group of people would come and sit by me and just talk to me.
At the very least,
because
a home
sometimes
teacher.
that's all it takes. You just need that little bit of companionship, and then it's like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad. I can give this a few more tries.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, after 2 times of going and no one seeing that you're sitting by yourself, no one sensing that this guy is struggling, it's like, okay, this is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, and then I had a really awkward moment at work when I was working at a treatment center, and one of the girls that I was working with, one of the staff, she was like, so, like, where do you go to church? Like you Mormon? You go to church? And I told her where I lived and where my church meeting was every Sunday and all that. She's like, oh, I think you're in my ward.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I just completely left it there. And by this point, I hadn't gone to church in like several months. So. Right. It was funny.
That is funny.
She was super uncomfortable around me from then on.
I bet.
Moving on. Number 7. At the end of the day, I can't doubt the experiences I've had.
Oh, okay.
So again, the idea that your personal spiritual experiences are sufficient to determine that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that there is a God and the Book of Mormon is true and the church is true and all that stuff. Everything that comes with it. Number 8, there's evidence on both sides, so I choose to believe.
There's that choose to believe again.
Right. This one reminds me of some of the comments that I got on Facebook concerning Boyd K. Packer and his remarks about the gay community. And some people were saying, you know, that homosexuality being a choice is a mixed bag and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I've looked at the evidence on both sides and I choose this. It's like, no, you haven't.
Right.
You have not actually looked at the evidence.
Right. Reading an article written by someone else on the other side doesn't constitute you looking at the evidence.
Right. If you looked at the evidence, then you would agree with the American Psychological Association that homosexuality is not a choice.
Yeah.
And that all of the things that Boyd K. Packer therefore said about being able to change your sexual orientation is problematic and is psychologically traumatic, you know.
Yeah.
Number 9, have you read insert faith-promoting apologetic book or article?
My answer would almost undoubtedly be no, because I could not stomach LDS material.
Yeah. I've grown a bit of a tolerance for it over the years, but early on in my journey out, I avoided it a lot. Part of me, I think, was worried that I would regret my decision to leave, and that, and you know, it's like when when you and I would go to your parents' place, and after dinner, they would insist on reading scriptures from the Book of Mormon. Okay, and then there was that incident the last time that we did it, like a year and a half ago, when we were reading part of Third Nephi, when Jesus is coming down and talking about the little ones and blessing the children and all that stuff, and the angels come down and all that stuff. And those were the verses that I was reading, okay, with your family.
Yep.
And I got super uncomfortable, and I got mildly, visibly irritated, and
Especially on the car ride home.
right, and it's like in my mind, I know that it's the indoctrination, okay, but I'm still feeling the effects of it sometimes. You know, you feel those things that they tell you to feel, that they raise you to feel, and in my mind, I know that it's psychological conditioning. That I have conditioned myself to react a particular way to these things.
Right.
And that's what upset me. I wasn't mad because your family believed this stuff. I was mad because the church manipulated me at a vulnerable age and conditioned me psychologically to feel these things and then tell me that those feelings are God talking to me and that this is true because of it.
Right.
That's why I was angry. You know, and that's why I became super uncomfortable.
Yeah. Luckily, we were on our way out already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that kind of thing hadn't happened to me in a long time. Yeah, just and I knew, like, even early on that there was that possibility of feeling these things again, but still, I knew that it was the indoctrination.
Right.
You know, it's like I don't want to feel those things. Those things make me uncomfortable. You know. Anyway.
Yeah, the spirit is an uncomfortable thing to feel.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Well, yeah, we talked about that last week.
Yeah. I hated thinking that I felt the spirit. It was awful.
Number 10, plenty of people, really intelligent people, have tackled these issues and still concluded that the church is true.
You have to bend over backwards to do that, though.
When you really start getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just love that they try and point out that there are scientists out there who still believe this stuff. And it's
Right.
like, if you look at the statistics, statistically speaking, like 2% of scientists believe that. The evidence is overwhelming and favors the other side.
Right. And there's actually a breakdown of the way that statistic comes down. So the majority of people in, the National Academy of Sciences or whatever, are non-religious, and most of them are atheist or agnostic. But there's a few pockets of doctors and scientists who tend to be very religious. One group actually includes my dad, OBGYNs. Doctors who deliver babies and work with mothers.
Okay.
The idea being that them seeing life come into the world is faith promoting in a way, right? And I can totally see why that would be the case.
Yeah.
The other one is engineers, because they see everything as being designed and mechanical and working in a particular way because somebody designed it to be that way, you know. And so, yeah. So again, it lends those people to seeing intelligent design, and therefore God. You know.
Right.
11. Read this Fair Mormon article.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you what I think about it afterwards?
Right. That's the thing that I always think. Like when they do offer that kind of stuff, it's like, if I do read this, I reserve the right to tell you what I think about it.
Yeah.
You know, do you really want to have that conversation?
Exactly.
And I've actually started a few conversations like that, and a few people have actually backed away. In particular, at work, where they say, one person in particular said, "Matt, you need Jesus." And I said, "Do you really want to have that conversation?"
Was it a staff?
Supervisor.
Oh, that sounds like her.
Yeah. And and she said, "No." Yeah. Number 12. You/they are just bitter.
I am bitter.
Yeah.
25 years of my life for that church.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the being offended thing.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say I'm offended by the church. I'm bitter towards the church.
Okay.
Like, I didn't leave because I was offended.
So you would identify it more as being bitter
Yeah.
about
And
the
I
fraud
didn't
and
leave
whatnot.
because I was bitter. Like, the bitterness has happened more recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's come with time. Realizing that, holy crap, 25 years of my life for this church, I
Right.
could have lived a completely different life.
Yeah.
I could be a
With a lot
completely
less
different
baggage.
person. Yeah, with a lot less baggage. I could be at a completely different point in my life right now
Yeah.
than I am. And it's like I still have so many things to work through that I shouldn't have to work through that are holding me back in other areas of my life. You know? It's like,
That are
ugh.
solely caused by your association with the church.
Yeah, because everything in your life revolves around the church. So extricating that from every aspect of your life, like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Especially because a lot of the time you don't realize that it's still part of your life.
You have any examples?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. I think I've said everything that I want to say about that kind of stuff. Because to me, it's still very similar to the idea that being offended is not a reason to leave the church. It's like, well, it's still a valid reason, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, it is a valid reason. I mean, depending on the offense. I mean, it's a valid reason if you want to leave the church, regardless of the reason.
Right.
But maybe some offenses are kind of silly, but it probably stacked on top of other things. It's never just one thing,
Yeah, that's true.
in my opinion. It's not just one thing.
Yeah, and that's where the concept of the shelf comes from. Where in Mormonism, ex-Mormons will often say that, their shelf broke.
Yeah.
So when they have a doubt, for instance, a common one is problems with the Book of Abraham being an authentic record, okay, or the Book of Mormon having anachronisms, or Joseph Smith being coercive towards young women. They put it on a metaphorical shelf and say, someday this will be explained. God will give me the right answer
Right.
that puts this in perspective, that I can still hold on to the church being true. Okay, and they just keep putting more and more things on that shelf until eventually they've got so many things that go unexplained and they're just bad, just bad for the church and bad for the person's view of the church, that finally that shelf breaks and they can't justify going to the church anymore.
Right.
Number 13. You have an anti-Mormon agenda.
No.
That was just funny to me.
If I had an anti-Mormon agenda, I would be actively trying to get my family out of the church.
Well, this one is trying to place a bias on people that leave the church.
Right.
And saying that, the reason that they are so against the church is because, well, I mean, they list all these other reasons, but the reason why nobody should take you seriously is because you have a bias against the church.
It's like, but you have a bias against people outside of the church too.
Right.
Why does that make mine obsolete?
Right. And why is anything that is not faith promoting anti-Mormon?
Right.
You know.
Because it doesn't promote faith. Duh.
Duh.
The answer was in the question.
Okay, number 14. This is a very, very common one. You can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. So take that.
Well, I mean, that goes back to how much time you spent in the church.
Yeah.
You know?
And I remember writing a blog post about this a while back. And they use this as an argument to belittle people outside of the church who leave the church. Trying to make it sound like they're being juvenile or whatever. And they're not being mature enough to just leave it alone.
Right.
The problem, though, is that, as we've talked about, a lot of people feel animosity, they feel offended, bitterness, okay? They feel these negative emotions. And the reason that they feel these negative emotions is because, in a sense, they have been abused by the church, okay? Like, there's a reason why they feel these things. And when you're a victim of abuse, a lot of people who are victims will try to actively fight abuse. Okay, it's why so many of the kids that I work with at my treatment center say that when they grow up, they want to be a therapist or they want to be a psychiatrist. Okay, it's because they want to help fix the problem. Okay, it's the same thing with people who leave the church and who feel animosity or bitterness towards the church for the things that they did because of the way that it affected them negatively, and they want to spare other people that same kind of grief. It's not juvenile. I think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
I think it shows a level of maturity to try to help people not have to go through that same kind of stress and turmoil, because it does have a psychological toll going through a faith crisis,
Agreed.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, 15. I think this is the last one.
Okay.
Nothing will convince me that Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet and that the church isn't true.
Fine.
Okay.
You can believe it all you want, but don't judge me because I don't. And that didn't work for me.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I have a problem with this whole idea of convincing people. The idea of missionary work, for instance, is just arrogant, going around challenging people's beliefs, telling them that they're wrong, all those kinds of things. Like I'm perfectly comfortable with having those conversations if the other person wants to have a real conversation. But very often they just want to either convince you that you're wrong or that they're right, and that you should join their church,
Right.
And so it becomes very agenda driven. And it in a lot of cases, in my experience, that becomes less productive when it's just two people trying to tell the other person that they're wrong. But we can talk about things like epistemology, how you know what you know, whether or not the reasons that you claim are the reasons for why you hold your beliefs are valid, why feelings are enough to say that a church is true, for instance, whether or not that is a legitimate thing. You can talk about logical fallacies. Those kinds of things I think are a little bit more productive than trying to convince somebody Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet because he was a polygamist.
Right.
But at the same time, it doesn't work the other way either, where trying to say to somebody, you're just mad because you don't have a real testimony.
Right.
Or you need to just give Brother Joseph a break because, God allowed him to do that, or he was using him even though he was a weak man. Those kinds of things will never convince the other side either. No. And then you have the Fox News problem of people just yelling past each other,
right?
And they think
calling
that
people's names,
right? And they think that he who yells loudest wins,
right?
And that's not how things work. And you'll just be incredibly frustrated if you go through life having those kind of confrontations.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. If you had taken that approach with me, I would still be in the church and we would not be married.
Right. Because you would have gotten super defensive.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why it's problematic. They just get more and more entrenched in the idea that their church is true and that you are working for the adversary, working for the devil.
And internally, I was very defensive, like when you started introducing things to me. But then it was like, after I thought about it, I was like, he's not forcing it on me. It's still my choice. It's like if I ever say that I'm uncomfortable, he turns it off. Like you're not force feeding it to me, and that was different to me. Yeah, it's like, okay, let's give this a chance. And then, holy crap, this is starting to make sense. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's all I got.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
I think that was a good thing to end on. I don't think we need to talk about anything else.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show.
Thanks for listening.
If you would like to contact us, you can email us at skepticsquaredpodcast@gmail.com. You can check out the show's blog at www.skepticsquaredpodcast.blogspot.com. You can rate us and review us. Excuse me. You can rate us and review us on iTunes or any of the other platforms that you might find us. And we will see you next time on the Skeptic Squared podcast.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.